Fantasy football players absolutely cannot stand that the wide receiver position is by nature very inconsistent. So today, we're going to be breaking down some of my biggest buy lows, 5 buy lows at the wide receiver position, and then 3 guys that you should be selling high on right now in fantasy football leagues. Danny's going to be breaking down running backs later today, so we'll have you covered for both of those positions as well. If you guys enjoy at any point, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here, comment any of your trade questions down below. I'll get to as many as I possibly can. Now let's get into it. All right, so there's a lot of guys that I could talk about in today's video, but just to give you guys an idea of my thought process here, the secret formula for identifying wide receiver trade targets, and honestly running back and quarterback and tight end trade targets as well, you define what these players are based on their usage, based on their talent, based on their offensive environment and team situation, and then you determine what your league mates might be viewing them as based on their recent performance. In this case, we only have a 1-week sample size, but week 1 overreaction season is in full force, and I promise you that 1-week sample size will stick in the minds of a lot of your league mates. And if there's a difference between, let's say, Brandon Ayuk being what I consider a solid wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 spike week potential, but now because he had a monster game in week 1, your league views him as better than Davante Adams, for example, or better than Garrett Wilson, for example, then you have what I like to call a sell high / buy low window, and that's essentially the formula for all of the buy lows and all of the sell highs in this video. Especially in home leagues and in more casual leagues, people are very feast or famine, and you can get some very good discounts if you understand the reality of the situation, take off the goggles of what just happened in the previous week. If you didn't watch football, for example, for a week, how would you think about these players? Would your opinion change very much week over week? If you're less reactive than your league mates, it presents a lot of buying windows. So let's start it off with T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals in general, but T. Higgins specifically. The Bengals offense had 6 first downs on Sunday. T. Higgins had his usual 8 targets, which is what he pretty much gets every game with the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't anticipate T. Higgins to be dropping 0 points regularly. And more importantly, this offense in Cincinnati is a top 3 to 5 unit in the NFL. They faced a division rival in the Cleveland Browns, who they've struggled with, on the road in a monsoon bad weather game, after their quarterback, Joe Burrow, missed pretty much all of training camp and the preseason. In my opinion, this was just the Bengals kicking off some rust. It was a bad loss for them, but they're easily going to bounce back, and I'm not worried about them whatsoever. So if you can get a discount on T. Higgins right now, which you absolutely should be able to, I am going to send out some offers. And with all of these players, I'll give you guys some example trades that have happened in real leagues on Yahoo Fantasy here. We have Devontae Smith being traded away for T. Higgins and DeAndre Hopkins. I like the Higgins side of that. We have Zay Flowers being sold straight up for T. Higgins, which is absolutely absurd. We have Chris Godwin and Khalil Herbert being sold for T. Higgins and a throw-in running back like Rashad Penny. We have Tua Tagovailoa being sold for T. Higgins, Dak Prescott being sold for T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson and Jordan Addison being sold for T. Higgins. You guys pretty much get the point. If you can get T. Higgins for anything less than the wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 he's actually worth, then you should be going out and sending some offers for him. So the next trade target is a guy that I value as a low-end wide receiver 1, mid-wide receiver 1, with high-end wide receiver 1 upside. Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. He faced PFF's number 2 graded corner in last season, and he also had a monster grade this week with Patrick Surtain of the Denver Broncos. And as I've talked about with shadow coverage, it also affects how play callers design the game plan and how they actually call plays. It's not that Davante Adams isn't good enough to beat Patrick Surtain one-on-one. He absolutely is, but Josh McDaniels and Jimmy Garoppolo probably don't want to test Patrick Surtain, so it usually results in them getting less targets, less of their overall workload when Surtain is on Davante Adams, which in this case was a lot. They were playing on the road in Mile High, and I was pretty impressed with what Jimmy Garoppolo put on film against a tough Broncos defense, like I said, in a very hard atmosphere to play against. And if this offense is going to be solid this year, Davante Adams is going to crush his expectations, because within the realm of possibility, within the range of outcomes, was Davante Adams being in an anemic Raiders offense. And from what I saw to Jimmy Garoppolo, he literally led all quarterbacks in expected points added and completion percentage over expectation as well. He had a very good performance against the Broncos, and I'm really encouraged with what I saw from Jimmy Garoppolo in this Raiders offense. If you guys can, go after Davante Adams for a slight discount right now. Use a guy like Brandon Ayuk or Michael Pittman or Mike Evans, guys that had big performances this past week. Maybe you can also use Devontae Smith or Chris Olave or somebody similar to see how much more you have to add on top of those players to get to Davante Adams, because you're not going to get him 1-for-1, at least most likely. But if you go Brandon Ayuk plus Puka Nacua or plus Brian Robinson or something like that, you might be able to get up to Davante Adams, who in my opinion is a low-end wide receiver 1 projection the rest of the season. Then we get into the next buy low candidate here with DJ Moore. A lot of DJ Moore and Justin Fields slander going on right now. Is Justin Fields going to be this year's Jalen Hurts? I would say probably not. It doesn't look like he's going to come out guns a-blazing this year like Jalen Hurts did last year, but I am still optimistic for this offense, and I do think they can be a lot better as a passing unit. The Bears were a complete wasteland for pass attempts last year. They were barely throwing the ball. Justin Fields beat out his career pass attempt in just one game in week 1. His career high in pass attempts in one game last year was 27. He had 37 pass attempts, and DJ Moore having just 2 targets is an anomaly. It's something I don't expect to happen week over week. The Packers defense is a top 10 unit, top 5 potential unit against the pass, and Jair Alexander is a lockdown corner. So I would not read too much in to DJ Moore and Justin Fields having a bad day through the air, especially knowing that it took only 1 week, like I said, for Justin Fields to best his career high in pass attempts by 10 pass attempts overall. And the Bears were actually passing before the game got out of hand as well. So if you're thinking, oh, they were only throwing the ball because they were losing by a lot, well, A, that didn't matter last year. They still ran the ball a lot. And B, they were actually passing the ball in neutral pass scripts 43% of the time, which doesn't sound like a lot, but believe me, from last year's Chicago Bears offense, that's a major, major improvement. So right now, if you can get DJ Moore for Terry McLaurin, for Michael Pittman Jr., for Mike Evans, for Darren Waller, for Deontay Johnson, in package deals tearing down with DJ Moore as part of that deal, I'm absolutely going after him anywhere I can get him right now. The way I view DJ Moore is the same low-end wide receiver 2 with high-end wide receiver 2 upside that he's pretty much always been. 1 week is not going to sway that opinion for me on DJ Moore. Next guy that we're going to talk about is Drake London here, and I'm sure somebody's going to go to the comments and call me an idiot for saying that Drake London is a good buy low. Am I tempering expectations for Drake London this year based on, the potential wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside I saw for him potentially being? For sure. Week 1's usage was the same old Arthur Smith antics, and I definitely downgrade Drake London, at least overall, in terms of my opinion of him and then my rest of season rankings. But with Drake London, we have to define the fact that this guy has a wide receiver 1 profile. His target share, his youth, his draft capital, the type of prospect he was, he had wide receiver 1 upside this year, assuming that the Falcons didn't pass the ball at a very, very low rate. Now, it looks like that's going to be the case, but you still only downgrade him to like a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3, because his profile is still that of a wide receiver 1 at the absolute worst-case scenario. So you might be able to get this guy for like literal jack shit in your league right now. He might be dropped. He might be available for pretty much nothing. I'm seeing a number of people ask me if they should drop, Drake London for Puka Nacua, or if they should trade away Drake London for absolutely nothing. It was a 1-game sample size, fellas. Is he going to have games like this because Arthur Smith is an idiot and never throws the ball? For sure. But the Falcons are not going to be able to get away with throwing the ball only 18 times on any given week. If someone can finally limit their run game and not let Bijan and Tyler Algier completely run it down their throat, and Ritter can hopefully be a functional quarterback, because they actually came out passing in this game. He threw the first pass attempt of the game on the very first play, but it ended up being a pop pass up to himself in the air, and it was like a -6-yard gain, and it pretty much seemed like Arthur Smith didn't trust him for the rest of the game after that. It was his 5th ever start. We got to give the rookie basically some room for improvement. So I think with Drake London, you're getting him at absolute basement price tag right now. He's going basically for free. A lot of people don't want to even roster this guy, and you can get him for Nico Collins. You can get him for Cortland Sutton. You can get him for maybe Dak Prescott, who could be your second quarterback. You can get him for Romeo Doubs. You can get him for a number of guys that should not be able to get a guy that we were drafting 2 weeks ago in the 4th, 5th round because he has a wide receiver 1 profile that we downgrade to a wide receiver 2 because of the team situation. He's going to do this from time to time, don't get me wrong, but this is why he's a good flex play. This is why he's a good, wide receiver 4 for your roster. You don't want this guy being your wide receiver 1 because he's inconsistent because of the offense. But he does still have a very good profile. If the situational factors improve a little bit, then we could be talking about a guy that's an every week staple for your lineup. Next, we get into Jahan Dotson, who is the last wide receiver buy of this video. Sam Howell and the Commanders' offense were pretty disappointing, I will say, in week 1, especially going against the Cardinals. You thought they were going to be a lot better, but Jahan Dotson's usage was very solid. We saw Jahan Dotson last year, through the final 5 games of his rookie season, average a 23% target share. And in this season, so far in the first game that we saw, he posted like legit wide receiver 1 worthy data points in week 1 with a 25% target share, 33% of his team's air yards, 29% of the play action targets, 95% route participation. Yeah, Terry McLaurin still exists, and Sam Howell is a risk on any given week to drop a dud performance, kind of like what we saw against the Cardinals. But But Jahan Dotson is a perfect wide receiver 3 for your roster. He's the perfect flex play that you probably can swap 1-for-1 for some of these guys that you potentially got off the waiver wire. I would much rather have Jahan Dotson rest of the season than a lot of the top waiver ads this week. Gus Edwards, Puka Nacua, Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Algier, Jalen Warren, Justice Hill, whoever you got off the waiver wire this week, there's a chance that you might be able to swap them 1-for-1 for Jahan Dotson. And if anything, I'd be willing to add to those players to get up to Jahan Dotson. You guys can see some of the trades that have went down with Jahan Dotson. You got Jahan Dotson and Mike Evans for Amari Cooper, Jahan Dotson and TJ Hawkinson for George Pickens and JSN. Jahan Dotson straight up for James Cook. That one's a little closer, but I think that's pretty realistic. Jahan Dotson and Evan Hall for Zach Moss and Rashad Bateman. Jahan Dotson for Javonte Williams, etc., etc. So I think with Jahan Dotson, you're getting a guy that probably doesn't have a wide receiver 1 ceiling unless McLaurin got hurt, but you're talking about a guy that has a wide receiver 3 baseline every given week. He has wide receiver 2 upside if Sam Howell and or Jacoby Brissett can play at a high level. So I think a good buy low candidate. And an honorable mention, because we're only talking about wide receivers in this video, I did want to make sure we did say that, the elite quarterbacks that had down performances, Josh Allen, Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Lamar Jackson, also very good buy low opportunities. If you drafted Tua Tagovailoa or Anthony Richardson or somebody like that, go after one of those elite quarterbacks because they have better projections year over year and long-term for the rest of the season. So with Tua Tagovailoa, maybe you can package Tua plus Puka Nacua, who you got off the waiver wire, and get up to Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson. Probably can't get to Josh Allen unless your league is very reactive, but I will say some of those trades will be possible in a lot of your leagues. So now let's get into the sell high candidates. And with sells, it's so important that I stress this point before I talk about these guys. As I talked about at the beginning of the video, we are defining what these guys are, and then we're determining if the market views them as differently than they are. We are taking a very realist view of what these guys could be for the rest of the season. Some of them are clear, some of them are not so clear. So the first sells that I'm going to talk about are Michael Pittman Jr. and Mike Evans, and I'm going to group these guys together because they both had very good weeks. They were both wide receiver 3s in fantasy football drafts, 6th, 7th round picks. And because they've both been good in the past, I think you can potentially cash out on these guys and tier up to a better wide receiver. The Colts still have a rookie quarterback that could come with some bumps and bruises. Baker Mayfield was facing the Vikings, and they are probably one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. These guys have perfect opportunities to cash out, get a better wide receiver, and not have to deal with those headaches. Maybe you can use Michael Pittman Jr. plus Kenneth Gainwell or Justice Hill or somebody that you got off the waiver wire and get up to T. Higgins, for example. Or maybe you can get up to DJ Moore using Michael Pittman Jr. 1-for-1. Or maybe you can swap Mike Evans for Drake London or Jahan Dotson 1-for-1. I am willing to do either of those trades that I mentioned. It's not about the players. I think Mike Evans and Michael Pittman Jr. are fine wide receiver 3s, but they might be being viewed as top 15 or top 20 wide receivers for the rest of the season. Right now, you can swap Mike Evans for DK Metcalf. You can swap Mike Evans and Alexander Mattison for Lamar Jackson and Isaiah Pacheco. You can swap Mike Evans and Puka Nacua for Tony Pollard, which is absolutely absurd. You can do a package deal with Mike Evans and get yourself Jahmyr Gibbs on the other side of that deal. And with Michael Pittman, you can swap him apparently straight up for Josh Allen in some leagues. Or maybe you can get a 2-for-1 like Deontay Johnson and Rashad White, which is a decent deal. Michael Pittman and Brandon Ayuk were traded away for Drake London and Bijan Robinson. You guys get the point. Just understand what they actually are and see kind of what you can get for them, and don't be afraid to shop your players. I think sometimes people hear me say sell these players and they go, nobody's going to buy them for that in my league. That's fine. That means you can't sell those players for the prices I'm outlining, but I am trying to appeal to a lot of people here that play in more casual leagues who will be able to get Josh Allen for Michael Pittman Jr. or will be able to get a solid, T. Higgins option for Michael Pittman Jr. and Puka Nacua. So another sell in today's video is Zay Flowers. Now, please don't go selling Flowers for nothing because I really do believe in him rest of season. Just because he's a sell doesn't mean I'm off of him and I think he's terrible for the rest of the year. I want to see what he's worth and how my league mates view him. That's why I'm saying he's a sell. There's risk with holding Zay Flowers. People don't want to talk about the fact that even though it's tough to gauge what his risk could be because he's a rookie and he very well could just be a league winner this year, a guy that you got in like the 7th, 8th, 9th round who ends up being a wide receiver 2 or a top 15 wide receiver. But I believe, this is my assessment of him, he'll be similar to guys like Mike Evans and Michael Pittman Jr. and Jahan Dotson and some of those guys as a high-end wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside, or maybe a mid wide receiver 3 on the lower end of things. We got to remember too that both Odell Beckham Jr. and Rashad Bateman were clawing their way back from injury. So there's a good chance that Zay Flowers doesn't quite quite get the target share, doesn't quite get the route participation that we saw from him in week 1. And, of course, the number one of this team, Mark Andrews, was out for this game. It was a one-game sample size. We just can't project this guy to be a 45% target share guy every single week. So with Zay Flowers, definitely gauge the market. See what he's worth. See what you can get away with. Zay Flowers for Kenneth Walker. I'm cool with the Kenneth Walker side of that if you need a running back. Zay Flowers and Tua for Nick Chubb and Jalen Waddle. Big time smash. Somehow you can get Zay Flowers off your team in exchange for Garrett Wilson, which is absolutely absurd. You can trade away Zay Flowers and Brian Robinson for Davante Smith in some leagues. So definitely take advantage if these are the price tags that your league mates are putting Zay Flowers on. If you can only get Drake London for Zay Flowers and you prefer Zay Flowers, that's fine. But definitely keep in mind, what is he worth on the open market? What can I shop this guy for? And make those adjustments accordingly. So the final sell of this video is Puka Nacua. And again, it was a hell of a debut for Puka Nacua. Don't get me wrong, 15 targets, but one-game sample sizes are dangerous, especially when we have no prior information to work off of with a rookie wide receiver. What happens if Puka Nacua goes 2 for 27 next week with no touchdowns and 3 targets, right? What happens to his value if that is the scenario that plays out? It's not like this guy was an elite prospect, a first-round pick. We were lucky enough to potentially hit on this guy if you guys got him on the waivers overnight, or if you had him on your roster already. Let your league mates envision the elite upside, the new Robert Woods tag that they're putting on Puka Nacua, because it's very equally likely, and I would argue it's even more likely, that this guy is a one-game flash in the pan, because he wasn't that good of a prospect. He was a day 3 pick. I'm just playing the odds here. I'm a numbers guy. You guys know that. He could very well be a good pick this year, a top 36, top 40 wide receiver, like I'm hearing some people say. But even if he crushes, if you just ship off that risk and get him off your team, you'll be set up with whatever stud you can get for Puka Nacua. So as I made reference to earlier on, if you have Michael Pittman and Puka Nacua on your team, go after T. Higgins with both of those players, or go after Davante Smith, or go after Jalen Waddle, or go after Jahmyr Gibbs using those 2 players. Whatever you get for him in a trade will trump the upside that you're sacrificing by getting that risk off of your team. But if he flops, obviously, if he is a one-game flash in the pan, you're going to be thanking your lucky stars that you struck while the iron was hot and that you listened to me in this video. So Puka Nacua right now, some absurd prices. You can sell Puka Nacua and Mike Evans for Tony Pollard, which is absolutely ridiculous. Puka Nacua was sold straight up for T. Higgins. Absolutely ridiculous again. Puka Nacua and Jordan Addison for Davante Smith. Perfect example of kind of what I just outlined. So definitely keep that in mind with these buys and sells. Again, it's not binary. It's going to depend on league to league. So take advantage of this advice. Go after the 5 buys. If you can't get them for the price tags that I outlined, then you just can't get them for the price tags that I outlined. Again, if you have those sells on your team, see what they're worth on your open market. But with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, comment down below any of your trade questions. Within the first day of this being uploaded, I will try to answer every question that you guys leave. So definitely hammer the comment section. And if I answer your question, definitely leave a like and subscribe on the channel. And also, if you guys want our weekly rankings to help you guys dominate this season, you want to make sure that you're getting the best start-sit advice possible, that you're putting the best matchup players out there based on Vegas information, over-unders, and spreads, and where the sharps are betting, and all that good stuff, definitely check out Underdog Fantasy. You can get our weekly rankings as well as our rest of season rankings when those drop later this week for free by signing up just using $10 on the site, which you can then win money with using the promo code FSE. Once you do that, you'll get an email within a couple hours from us or from Underdog giving you access to our rest of season rankings and our weekly rankings if you're interested in that. That will be linked down below in the pinned comment, or you can go on over to flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE for 30% off over there. You can get access to our weekly rankings, our dynasty rankings, our rest of season rankings all over there as well if you can't play Underdog where you live, or if you already have an Underdog account. So if that interests you, link will be down below in the pinned comment like I said. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.